Today marks 2 years since the tragic death of Arthur Labinjo Hughes. His little life was cut short when his stepmother Emma Tustin murdered him in her home in Solihull on June the 17th, 2020. Arthur was born on the 4th of January 2014. In late 2015, his parents Olivia Labinjo Hughes and Thomas Hughes split up, with the two sharing custody of Arthur. Just over 3 years later, in February 2019, Olivia killed her new partner Gary Cunningham, stabbing him after a toxic relationship. In August of that year, Arthur's father met his stepmother Emma Tustin via the dating website Plenty of Fish. In September, Olivia Labinjo Hughes was jailed for 18 years on account of manslaughter for the killing of her partner. This was reduced to 11 years in July 2021 after an appeal. Also that month, not long after Arthur's dad had begun seeing Tustin, Arthur went back to school after the summer holidays. A teaching assistant said she had no concerns about him in the first few days back. But later that month, Arthur was told by someone that his mother was in prison because she had done something bad. Initially, Arthur had been told his mother had gone away with the army. By the end of the month, Arthur's uncle Blake, his dad's brother, said Arthur's behaviour had changed quite a lot. He said Arthur had become more anxious about being told off, and also that his dad had become more strict with Arthur. Blake, who was quite close to Arthur, also recalled an argument he had with Tustin over the fact that he'd bought Arthur a Subway sandwich which she had called an unnecessary treat. A witness from Arthur's school in court said in October that Arthur's behaviour changed and he became less smiley and more reserved. Hughes also introduced Tustin to his family in October, with his mother Joanne saying she didn't like Tustin straight away. In November of that year, Arthur's dad and grandma Joanne had a meeting at his school to discuss concerns about his behaviour. The special educational coordinator at the school said Arthur had become fixated with death, murder, guns and the news. Apparently he was also having nightmares about his dad disappearing or even killing him. In December 2019, Arthur's mum Olivia put in a request to see him. There was also an incident at school when Arthur became upset after the baby Jesus was removed from his crib during the school nativity. On New Year's Eve 2019, Arthur's granddad Chris had a massive argument with his son, Arthur's dad Thomas, who he said was being too harsh on Arthur and going on at him for little things. Also on that day, Hughes proposed to Tustin. In January 2020, Hughes took Arthur to the doctors over concerns about his behaviour again. He also told his friends at school that his mother was in prison. The safeguarding lead at the school encouraged Arthur to talk to her about it rather than his friends. In February 2020, Emma Tustin's hairdresser, who was a witness in court, recalled that Emma had brought Arthur with her when she'd gone to hers to get her hair done. He sat at a table and didn't move with his hands on his knees by choice the entire time, she said. In March of that year, Arthur's dad took him to a mental health specialist who concluded there was no mental health issues. On the 22nd of March, Mother's Day, Emma Tustin claimed that Arthur had ruined the day by ripping up a sentimental photograph and a card. The next day, the first national lockdown was announced, and Thomas Hughes' mum asked him to come and stay with her along with Arthur, but he refused. In April 2020, Arthur got into a fight with Emma's child from another relationship. The father of her other child came round and punched Thomas Hughes, so Hughes took Arthur to stay with his mum Joanne, Arthur's grandma. While there, Arthur told his grandma that Tustin had grabbed him by the head, slammed him against a wall and called him a horrible, ugly brat. Joanne Hughes took photographs and also found bruises on his back. She asked her son if he would leave Arthur with her for a few days, but he refused. On April the 16th, she rang social services. On the 17th of April, social services visited Tustin's home. They concluded there was no safeguarding issues, as both Arthur and Tustin's other son indicated they were happy and safe. The social worker said she could only see one faint bruise on Arthur's back, which Tustin had said was from the boys' fight. Thomas Hughes later said in court that Tustin had taught the boys to lie about this. On the 18th of April, Arthur's uncle Daniel, Hughes' other brother, talked to the police about Arthur's bruising and sent a police officer photographs after Arthur's dad had contacted the police about his brothers harassing him at Tustin's home. A police officer instructed someone else to contact social services, and there was no other police response. On the 24th of April, the social worker who had visited the home on the 17th saw the photographs of the bruising and was shocked, but didn't take any steps to reassess Arthur's safety. In May 2020, the punishments had started, whereby Arthur will be made to stand in the hallway for hours. Tustin sent voice recordings of Arthur's tortured crying to Hughes. They exchanged texts, calling him names such as Devil Child, Satan and Hitler. On one of the voice notes, Arthur cried out his uncle Blake's name and said, "No one loves me." On another, he cried, "Daddy's going to throw me out the window." By this point, he was also sleeping on the living room floor on a regular basis, even when beds were free upstairs. On June the 8th, 2020, Arthur's school reopened after lockdown, but his dad didn't send him in as he'd had a bad night's sleep. Arthur never went back to school. From Friday the 12th of June to Sunday the 14th of June, Arthur spent more than 35 hours in isolation in the hallway. A living room camera captured the cruelty that Tustin and Hughes had exacted on him. They ate in the living room while he was in the hallway prison for 14 hours and 19 minutes on Friday, 11 hours 49 minutes on the Saturday, and 10 hours 54 minutes on the Sunday. The camera installed by the couple picked up incidents of Hughes slapping him and Tustin grabbing him by the neck, marching him around. Between Friday, June the 12th, and his death the next week, his clothes weren't changed once. He wore the same thing, a onesie. On June the 15th, the camera captured Tustin ripping the bedsheets from underneath Arthur at 7 a.m, making him cry. Later that day, she went back to the same hairdressers she'd been to before, taking Arthur with her again. He stood in the doorway for the 6-hour period she was there. The hairdresser also testified that Tustin had shouted at him throughout the day. Thomas Hughes arrived later, grabbed Arthur by the scruff of the neck and called him a name. Hughes whipped Arthur with a belt that night before going out. Tustin looked after him and texted Hughes saying that Arthur had bitten her. Hughes texted back telling her to end him and marched him in and out of the kitchen by the scruff of the neck when he got back that evening. On June the 16th, the day of the fatal attack, Arthur woke at 8:30 a.m. on the living room floor, weak and malnourished. Arthur went round with Tustin again to have her hair finished off. The hairdresser's partner Tobias secretly gave Arthur a drink when Tustin wasn't looking and described him as gaunt, malnourished and a poor little kid who was broken. Tustin and Arthur returned to their home in Cranmore Road at about 1 p.m. At 2 o'clock, Tustin was doing her eyebrows and claimed Arthur threw himself into her bedroom door. The prosecution said it was around this time that she poisoned him with salt. She took a picture of him at 2:15, crying in the hallway. It's believed that at 2:29, she carried out the fatal attack, slamming his head off a hard surface repeatedly. She texted Hughes 3 minutes later, telling him that Arthur had knocked himself out by banging his head off the floor. 5 minutes later, Hughes came home. 5 minutes after that, they rang 999. That evening, Tustin and Hughes were arrested. Arthur was taken to Birmingham Children's Hospital, and around 11 hours later, at 1 a.m, it was concluded that nothing could be done to save him, and Arthur died in intensive care after his life support machine was switched off at the age of just 6 years old. Arthur will forever be remembered as a smiling, happy young boy whose life was cruelly taken away from him by the people who were meant to look after him. He loved the blues, and the blues will never forget him. His story has touched the hearts of millions across the country, from the people on his street to those hundreds of miles away.